My live honeybee packages finally arrived, and after preparing their homes and environment, I was very excited with what I saw. Now, there are 3 types of honeybees in this project I'm doing. Suskraz bees originating from Canada, Southern Italians, and cornelians. Now you might be wondering, why get 3 of each kind of honeybee? Well, after keeping Italian since the start of my beekeeping hobby, I was curious about the Suskraz and cornelian types, and wanted to hopefully study them from buzz to honey production, just to see what they can do compared to the Italians. Plus, these 2 varieties of honeybee are adapt to climates with longer winters. The hardest time I've had with Italians dying out is during the winter months. So it is my hope that each queen produced from each split I make from these hives will mate with each of the other colony's males and thus create a honeybee hybrid, sharing the genetics of the Italian, Suskraz, and cornelian together, and thus be more adaptable to our Western Oregon winter and spring climate. But in getting these packages, there were some setbacks though. The packages were all late in the mail, and I was concerned about the honeybees' numbers in the packages, considering there's a limited amount of sugar water in them. And on top of that, I received a small scare after installing the queen in the Suskraz hive.
Wait a minute, I'm stupid.
And for a while, there was no word concerning the cornelian package after being in transit for nearly 4 days. Stay tuned till the end to find out what happened next. Howdy guys, and welcome back to CBBs. The Suskraz bee package finally came. It was completely black inside from all the bees that were packed like sardines in a can. The only problem? It was raining and a little cold outside. I normally don't do beekeeping in these conditions because they are more defensive than normal, which creates unnecessary stress on the colony. Flying for any reason in cold, rainy weather taxes precious energy as the bees try to keep their wing muscles warm enough to fly. So, they can only fly for a short time before getting too cold to fly anymore. If they successfully return home, they consume more of their resources to keep their energy up. And as a package, they have very little food to begin with. I wanted to wait for a better day, but it was going to rain for 2 more days, and unfortunately, you can't tell how much sugar syrup is left in the package until you pull the container out. If you do that, the way the package is designed, the bees are already released. So not knowing how much food they had left, I proceeded to shake them into the hive right away. Thankfully, it wasn't raining too bad, so I set up an umbrella just in case the rain got worse, and put an inner feeder in the box to make it easier for the bees to feed. I know, not the best looking thing, but it will do for now. It's all I had laying around because I mainly feed with drip feeders. With everything set, it was time to release the bees into the bigger box. I sprayed the bees with homemade syrup so they would all focus on licking themselves and not fly all over the place as soon as I opened the package. I slid off the piece of plastic on top, tapped the package once to shake the bees to the bottom, and gently pulled the syrup can out. Now the queen cage was hanging there at the top, where the can was, so I pulled her out first and made sure she was moving. And it's hard to see under the workers, but she is moving in the cage. With the queen out of the package, I tapped the bees again and shook them into their new box. I didn't have to tap all the bees, just the majority of them. Setting the package by the entrance of the hive allowed the rest to walk in after they smelled the queen. I put the queen cage into the hive, and after filling the inner feeder with sugar syrup, I called it done. However, I said in the beginning that I received a scare. That's because I was standing there thinking, wait a minute, there wasn't any bee candy in the cage. So after opening the cage, there wasn't anything keeping the queen from walking out of it as I was taking my time sandwiching the cage in between the frames so it wouldn't fall. In that case, ideally I should have just held the cage over the tops of the frames and waited for her to come out on her own. That would have been the safe way to do it. So, could I have accidentally squished her? The thought almost made me sick. But there wasn't anything I can do about it until it was warmer outside and after the bees had a few days to settle in. Also, if the queen was alive, there would be eggs and hatching larvae in a few days anyway. If I saw that, that would be the answer I would need without having to tear the hive apart to find her. So, with that in mind, I had to walk away and wait. And it was a hard wait. Finally, after several cold, rainy days, it was a beautiful Saturday, and my Italian beehive came. Later that day, I noticed that some had found the fruit trees and the maples, but not a lot of them were foraging though. Probably because they were still getting their bearings as to where they were. And, quite possibly, there wasn't as strong a nectar flow as I was expecting from the trees, which probably means that I've already hit a dearth in the season. So in the meantime, I needed to answer one of my biggest questions and check the Suskraz hive to see if the queen was alive. After pulling out the feeder, which they had completely drunk, I pulled out one of the frames that kept the queen cage snug. Now, if the queen made it okay, she would be on one of those two frames near the cage, or at least laid eggs there. I pulled out the queen cage and checked it. Of course, she wouldn't be in there now, but I've learned you can't always be too sure when it comes to finding queen bees. Sometimes you see queen bees in the oddest places. So now the moment of truth. Was she in the nest, or was she dead? I pulled out the frame to check. Well, she wasn't on that side of the frame, but I did catch sight of something in the cells that I couldn't quite make out for sure. So I went into the light to see it better. Yes! There wasn't just eggs, but hatching larvae too. That was all the confirmation that I needed to see. The queen is okay. I didn't even need to see her at that point. So, now that we know that the queen is laying and is active, what shall we name this colony, guys? These are Canadian honeybees, so any name that is easier to say than Suskraz would do. I was thinking the Susk tribe, but that is still a mouthful like Suskraz. But what do you think, CB family? What name should we give them? Now, another thing I saw when I was looking for eggs and the queen was fresh pollen that they had gathered, but not a lot of nectar though. That meant that I needed to feed them once more. I replaced the ugly inner feeder with 2 new frames and filled a drip feeder with sugar syrup for them. Hopefully that will sustain them until there is a good springtime flow again. And yes, the hive is wobbly, but don't worry. I fixed it with a shim. So now, it was just a waiting game for the cornelians to arrive. They were expected to be delivered, but I didn't hear from the post office about it. I waited for the cornelians until Tuesday, but there was no notice from the post office at all. So the next day, I called the post office to see if there were any packaged bees to pick up. They didn't have any bees at all, or any live critters. So the next people to call was Man Lake. And it turned out that the package had been shipped the previous Monday, just like before, but it showed that they were still in Sacramento, California, because nobody wanted to get close enough to scan the package. It was Wednesday when I called them, and it was estimated that they would arrive on Friday. However, the representative that I was talking to quickly added that they overestimate the delivery just to be safe, and that the package might even arrive sooner. I was hoping it would come sooner, because the Suskraz package was in transit for 1 day, and their syrup can was half full. The cornelians were already 3 days in transit when I called, and it sounded like they possibly might be 2 more days in transit after that. I had the same sick feeling I had when I was concerned I had squished the Suskraz queen. Will they have enough food to make the trip? The next day at noon, however, I received word that the bees had come, so I left work early to take care of them. I released them in a new box the same way I released the Suskraz package, so I won't bore you with the details with this one. Compared to the size of the Italian colony and the Suskraz colony, the cornelians had a lot more bees in it. And even though their syrup can was empty, there was no dead bees in the package. I was relieved to see that. And this time, the queen cage had candy in it to block the queen from leaving it immediately. So I was able to put the queen cage in like normal without worrying about squishing her. Overall, it was very satisfying to be a beekeeper again. I didn't realize how much I missed it until the first package had come. I was pleased how everything worked out, and I can't wait to see what would follow in the next couple weeks until I can do the first spring hive inspection of all these hives. If the bees are actively working 7 frames of comb, they are ready for either another box or a split. And you guys will have the ability to choose which action I take if they are ready for a second box for room or a split. Right now, from what I saw in the Suskraz package, they are working 3 frames. So how many frames do you think they will be working when we open the hives again in a couple weeks? Stay tuned to find out. And as always, be blessed.